When you hear the name Dennis Hopper, what comes to mind? Rebellion? Danger? Maybe a kind of wild, reckless genius that just burned through American movies. He was an actor, a director, an artist, and let's be honest, one of Hollywood's greatest and most difficult characters. So let's get into it. This is an absolutely incredible story of soaring success, spectacular failure, and one of the most unlikely comebacks in film history. Hopper actually said this after walking away from a head-on truck collision completely unhurt. And you know what? That quote could basically be the tagline for his entire life. He lived on the absolute edge, taking risks that would have destroyed pretty much anyone else, not just once, but over and over again. But before all of that, before the near-death experiences and getting exiled from Hollywood, there was this moment. A moment when Dennis Hopper had the entire film industry right in the palm of his hand. And it all started with one movie that literally changed everything. You have to remember, at the time, Hollywood was totally out of touch. They were still making these old-fashioned, squeaky clean movies. They had no idea how to talk to the generation of Woodstock and anti-war protests. Uneasy Rider, which Hopper directed, co-wrote, and starred in, wasn't just a movie for that generation. It was a mirror. It was like, for the very first time, young people saw their reality, their lives, up on the big screen. The numbers here are just staggering. I mean, look at this. On a shoestring budget of around $350,000, Uneasy Rider pulled in $60 million worldwide. That wasn't just a hit, it was an earthquake. It proved the counterculture was a goldmine, and it rocketed Hopper from a struggling actor to Hollywood's new golden bad boy. So all of a sudden, Universal Pictures is desperate to cash in on this new youth movement. They basically hand Hopper a blank check and say, go make your art, man. He had final cut, total control, the kind of power that filmmakers just dream of. But as we're about to see, giving a rebel genius absolute freedom, well, that can be a very, very dangerous thing. So, with the keys to the kingdom, Hopper sets out to make his masterpiece. He had this idea for an experimental, really philosophical film called The Last Movie. But instead of a masterpiece, he made the movie that would get him blacklisted from Hollywood for more than a decade. The whiplash here is just extreme. I mean, look at this contrast. With Uneasy Rider, he was the counterculture prophet who had cracked the code. 2 years later, with The Last Movie, he was a complete pariah. The same industry that put him on a pedestal now wanted absolutely nothing to do with him. And here's the kicker. Universal gave him $1 million, which was a huge amount of money back then, and complete artistic freedom. They thought they were betting on a genius, and they were right. What they didn't know was just how close that genius was to pure, unadulterated chaos. The production down in Peru was, well, legendary is one word for it. It was completely out of control. Hopper wanted to make this complex film about Hollywood corrupting other cultures, but his vision just got lost in a haze of drugs and ego. The set was fueled by cocaine, LSD, and what one writer called a fog of marijuana smoke. Hopper shot over 40 hours of footage, then spent a year editing it all into this fractured, confusing mess. And when the studio execs saw it and begged him to recut it, Hopper just flat out refused. And the critics? They were absolutely merciless. Roger Ebert's devastating line here really says it all. The film bombed, big time. And just like that, Dennis Hopper's phone stopped ringing. He was officially on the Hollywood blacklist. So what happened next was a solid decade in the wilderness. Hopper basically became this ghost, haunting the fringes of the film world, and his behavior got more and more, well, erratic. He was still working, taking roles in European art films and B-movies, but his reputation always came with him. Like, while filming Mad Dog Morgan in Australia, he got so drunk he destroyed a cemetery and got kicked out of the entire country. A few years later, on the set of Apocalypse Now, he and Marlon Brando hated each other so much that they had to film all their scenes separately. And if you're wondering how someone could get that out of control, well, take a look at this. This, according to Hopper himself, was his daily diet. A half gallon of rum, a fifth of rum on the side, 28 beers, and 3 grams of cocaine. He even said he only did the cocaine so he could sober up enough to drink more. It's just unbelievable. I mean, it's almost impossible to imagine anyone coming back from that kind of abyss. Logically, the story should end right there. But with Dennis Hopper, logic doesn't really apply. His comeback was every bit as dramatic and, frankly, as terrifying as his fall. So how in the world did he do it? Well, first, he had to hit absolute rock bottom. He was literally found naked and hallucinating in a Mexican jungle.
That finally led him to get sober in 1983. Then he did something amazing. He channeled all that madness into his art. His performance as the monster Frank Booth in Blue Velvet was so bone-chilling, it announced to everyone that he was back. And in that very same year, he got an Oscar nomination for playing a town drunk in Hoosiers. The comeback was complete.
This wasn't just a comeback. It was a full-blown resurrection. He had traveled to the absolute heart of darkness, and somehow, against all odds, he made it back to the light. What an incredible arc, right? He went from the director who changed Hollywood to the maniac that nobody would hire, and finally to a sober, prolific, and totally respected elder statesman of independent film. He lived through it all and proved that even after the most catastrophic failure, you can still find your way back. And that really leaves us with this final, fascinating question. Hopper himself once said that when he was drinking, it was easier for him to become those wild characters people wanted to see. So was his artistic brilliance something separate from his self-destruction? Or was the chaos and the creativity all tangled up together, inseparable parts of what made him Dennis Hopper? It's a question as complicated and as fascinating as the man himself.